Welcome to an extraordinary story that will inspire you and show you how dreams can come true even in the darkest of times. Today we're exploring the life of Jim Carrey, a man who turned pain into laughter and transformed his struggles into success. As you listen, pay attention to the lessons about perseverance, creativity, and never giving up on your dreams. This is not just about learning English. It's about learning how humor can heal wounds and how determination can overcome any obstacle. So, pay close attention and let's begin this journey to improve your listening, expand your vocabulary, and find motivation in the life of a man who turned his pain into the world's laughter. Jim Carrey was born on January 17, 1962, in a small town called Newmarket in Ontario, Canada. His parents, Percy Carrey and Kathleen Oram, were hard-working people trying to make ends meet. Percy worked as an accountant and security guard, while Kathleen was a homemaker who struggled with her own personal demons. When Jim was born, he seemed like an ordinary baby, but there was something special about him that would soon become apparent. He had an incredible ability to make people laugh, even when life gave him every reason to cry. From a very young age, Jim was different from other children. While most kids his age were content playing with toys, Jim was busy entertaining anyone who would watch. He would make funny faces in the mirror, practice different voices, and create characters that seemed to come alive. His family quickly noticed that whenever Jim started performing, the whole room would light up with laughter. Even during difficult times, Jim's humor brought joy to everyone around him. But life wasn't always filled with laughter for the Carrey family. When Jim was young, his father Percy lost his job as an accountant. This devastating blow changed everything for the family. They went from being comfortable middle-class people to struggling just to survive. Percy had always been the steady provider, and losing his job crushed his spirit. The family had to move to a smaller, cheaper home, and money became a constant worry. Jim watched his father struggle with unemployment and saw how it affected the whole family. His mother, Kathleen, became increasingly depressed and would sometimes stay in bed for days. During these dark periods, Jim discovered that his humor wasn't just entertaining, it was healing. When his mother was sad, Jim would perform for her, making silly faces and telling jokes until she smiled. When his father felt defeated, Jim would do impressions of famous people, bringing laughter back into their home. At just 8 years old, Jim learned that laughter was powerful medicine. The financial struggles got worse when Jim was 12 years old. His father finally found work, but it wasn't as an accountant. Percy took a job as a janitor at a local factory, working long hours for very little money. But even this wasn't enough to support the family. The Carrey family made a difficult decision. They would all work together to survive. Every day after school, Jim, his brother John, and his sisters Patricia and Rita would go to the factory where their father worked. They would spend hours cleaning offices, emptying trash cans, and scrubbing floors. This was not the childhood Jim had imagined. While other kids were playing sports or hanging out with friends, Jim was working. His hands became rough from cleaning, and he was often exhausted. Some nights, the family would work until 2 in the morning, and Jim would still have to wake up early for school the next day. His grades began to suffer, and he felt like he was missing out on being a normal teenager. But even during these incredibly difficult times, Jim never lost his sense of humor. While mopping floors, he would pretend to be different characters. He would talk to himself in various voices, making up stories and jokes to pass the time. His family workers at the factory began to look forward to seeing Jim because he always made them laugh, even during the most boring and tiring work. One day, while cleaning an office, Jim looked at himself in a window reflection and made a promise. One day, I'm going to be so successful that my family will never have to worry about money again. He was only 13 years old, but he spoke these words with absolute certainty. He didn't know how it would happen, but he believed with every fiber of his being that entertainment was his destiny. At the age of 15, Jim made a bold decision that would change his life forever. He decided to perform stand-up comedy at a local comedy club called Yuck Yucks in Toronto. This wasn't just any comedy club. It was known for hosting professional comedians, and Jim was just a teenager with big dreams and no experience. The night of his first performance, Jim was terrified. His father Percy drove him to the club, and Jim remembers his hands shaking as they walked to the entrance. The club was dark and smoky, filled with adults who looked skeptical about this young kid who claimed he could make them laugh. When Jim got on stage, the spotlight was so bright he could barely see the audience. His voice cracked as he started his first joke. The first few minutes were rough. The audience wasn't sure what to make of this nervous teenager. But then something magical happened. Jim began doing impressions, first of his teachers, then of famous celebrities, then of people he had observed in everyday life. His face seemed to transform completely with each character. The audience began to chuckle, then laugh, then roar with approval. By the end of his set, Jim had won them over completely. The club manager was so impressed that he offered Jim a regular spot performing on weekends. For a 15-year-old, this was like winning the lottery. Jim would perform every Friday and Saturday night, earning enough money to help his family while also pursuing his passion. But balancing school, work at the factory, and performing comedy was exhausting. Eventually, Jim made another life-changing decision. At the age of 16, he dropped out of high school to focus entirely on comedy. Many people, including some teachers, told him he was making a huge mistake. One teacher said, "Jim, you're throwing your life away. Comedy is not a real career. You need to finish school and get a proper job." But Jim's father, Percy, surprised everyone by supporting his son's decision. Despite all the hardships the family had faced, Percy could see the spark in Jim's eyes when he talked about comedy. "Son," Percy told him, "I've worked regular jobs my whole life, and look where it got us. If you have a talent and a dream, maybe it's worth the risk." This support from his father meant everything to Jim. It gave him the confidence to pursue comedy full-time, even when the path seemed impossible. Jim's early days as a professional comedian were filled with rejection and struggle. He would drive to comedy clubs across Canada, sometimes sleeping in his car because he couldn't afford a hotel room. He performed in tiny clubs where the audiences were small and often uninterested. Some nights he would tell jokes to rooms with only 3 or 4 people. Other nights, he would be booed off stage. But Jim never gave up. He kept refining his act, developing new characters, and practicing his impressions. He studied other comedians, watching how they moved, how they timed their jokes, and how they connected with audiences. Jim wasn't just naturally funny. He was a student of comedy, always learning and improving. One of Jim's most important early influences was his comedy hero, Jerry Lewis. Jim studied Lewis's physical comedy and facial expressions, learning how to use his whole body to tell jokes. He also admired Richard Pryor's honest storytelling and Robin Williams's incredible energy and improvisation skills. Jim took inspiration from all these comedians, but developed his own unique style. In 1979, when Jim was 17 years old, he made another bold move. He decided to leave Canada and try his luck in Los Angeles, the entertainment capital of the world. This was an enormous risk. Jim had very little money, no connections in Hollywood, and no guarantee of success, but he believed in himself and his talent. Los Angeles was overwhelming for a young man from small-town Canada. The city was huge, expensive, and full of people who all had the same dream Jim had. He rented a tiny, cheap apartment and started performing at comedy clubs, like the Comedy Store and the Improv. These clubs were legendary. Many famous comedians had gotten their start there, but they were also incredibly competitive. Slowly, Jim began building a reputation in the Los Angeles comedy scene. Other comedians started talking about this young Canadian guy who could do things with his face that seemed almost supernatural. comedy club managers began remembering his name and giving him better time slots. During this period, Jim was still struggling financially. He was making some money from comedy, but not enough to live comfortably. He took odd jobs to pay rent. He worked as a janitor, a security guard, and even tried factory work. But no matter how tired he was from his day job, Jim never missed an opportunity to perform comedy at night. One evening in 1985, something happened that showed Jim's incredible determination and self-belief. He was feeling particularly discouraged after a difficult day of auditions and rejections. Instead of going home to his small apartment, Jim drove up to the Hollywood Hills, overlooking Los Angeles. He parked his old car, looked down at the city lights below, and took out a blank check. He wrote it out to himself for $10 million, adding, "for acting services rendered" in the memo line, and dating it for Thanksgiving Day, 1995, 10 years in the future. Jim folded up the check and put it in his wallet, promising himself that one day he would be worth that much money. This wasn't just wishful thinking. It was Jim's way of setting a clear goal and constantly reminding himself of what he was working toward. Every day when he opened his wallet, he would see that check and remember his dream. Jim's persistence began paying off in the late 1980s. He started getting small roles in television shows and movies. His first significant break came when he was cast in a sketch comedy show called In Living Color in 1990. The show was perfect for Jim because it allowed him to create multiple characters and show off his incredible range of impressions and physical comedy. The show made Jim famous, but he wasn't satisfied with just television success. He had bigger dreams. He wanted to be a movie star. In 1994, Jim got his chance when he was cast as the lead in a movie called Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Many people in Hollywood thought the movie would fail. The character was weird, the humor was strange, and Jim's physical comedy was unlike anything audiences had seen in movies before. But Ace Ventura was a huge success. Audiences loved Jim's over-the-top performance and his fearless physical comedy. The movie made over $100 million worldwide and turned Jim into a household name. Suddenly, everyone wanted to work with this rubber-faced comedian from Canada. That same year, Jim starred in The Mask, another movie that seemed like it might be too strange for mainstream audiences. But again, Jim's performance was magical. His character Stanley Ipkiss transforms into a green-faced superhero with incredible powers, and Jim brought both the regular guy and the superpowered character to life with equal skill. The success continued with Dumb and Dumber in 1994, where Jim played Lloyd Christmas, one of the most lovably stupid characters ever put on screen. The movie showed that Jim could work brilliantly with other actors. His chemistry with Jeff Daniels created some of the funniest moments in comedy history. By 1995, exactly when he had predicted, with his $10 million check, Jim was one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. When he cleaned out his wallet that Thanksgiving Day, he found the old check he had written to himself 10 years earlier. His father Percy had passed away just a few months before, but not before seeing his son achieve the success they had both dreamed of during those difficult nights cleaning offices together. Jim placed that check in his father's pocket at the funeral, a tribute to the man who had believed in his dreams when no one else would. Jim's success continued throughout the 1990s and 2000s, with movies like Liar Liar, The Truman Show, and Man on the Moon. But with success also came challenges. Jim struggled with depression and had to learn how to handle fame and the pressures that came with it. He discovered that making millions of people laugh didn't automatically make his own life perfect. Through it all, Jim never forgot the lessons he learned during his difficult childhood. He remembered what it felt like to struggle, to worry about money, and to feel like giving up. These experiences made him more compassionate and drove him to use his platform to help others. Jim Carrey's life story is proof that dreams can come true, even when the odds seem impossible. From a poor kid cleaning offices at night to one of the world's most beloved entertainers, Jim's journey shows us that talent, combined with determination and an unshakable belief in yourself, can overcome any obstacle. If you learned something new today, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference and helps me keep creating better English videos just for you. Your support truly means the world. Thank you so much.